The Big Bang Theory. These 4 simple words are enough to boil the blood in some people. It's always surprising seeing the very differing and vitriolic reactions from people when the show gets mentioned. Because if you only looked at reactions to the show The Big Bang Theory from the internet, you'd think it was the most sacrilegious garbage to ever curse the face of the earth. That somehow Sheldon Cooper himself poisoned our water supply, burned our crops, and delivered a plague unto our houses.
He did?
It was that bad. But then, if that was the case, how did the show rack up over 79 award wins and over 252, yeah, we counted, nominations? For a show that's hated a lot, it sure got a lot of nominations and has won an absolute ton of awards. Not to mention it ran for 12 years and now has a prequel series that's also going to be airing its 7th season in the relatively near future. So what happened? What did a show that's won so many awards, that's ran for so long, and that seemingly had a very steady viewership do to become so detested? People absolutely turned it into a personality trait to hate the show. So why? Why is The Big Bang Theory so hated? There are a few reasons, but let's start with the show's comedy. What's supposed to be the show's biggest draw? So, this show is rooted in nerd culture. It's hard to imagine nowadays where it's much more socially accepted, but this show began in 2007, before Iron Man came out. Comics were, at the time, still pretty niche. So this show leaning into nerd culture at the time was something different than what we're used to seeing. Most sitcoms weren't starring men who were really into Star Wars or comics or obscure nerdy media. So in a way, they were able to tap into this market early, just a year or so before Iron Man kicked off the MCU and changed culture as a whole. They were in a prime position to pull in this new audience and make jokes that they would get and make them feel seen and in on the joke. Instead, it turns out that their jokes were less for the nerds who could be tuning in and more about the nerds who could be tuning in. A shocking amount of the humor within the show can be boiled down to, man, look at these people into this nerdy thing. Pretty cringy, right? They'll never get girls like that.
Thank you.
Leonard, honey, you don't have to say thank you every time we have sex.
The jokes aren't for the nerds, they're about the nerds. It served to reinforce a lot of stereotypes that people have about nerds. Haha, look at these guys, they like Green Lantern. Of course they can't talk to women.
Oh, he speaks English, he just can't speak to women. He's kind of a nerd.
Beyond that, you can look at the show's initial premise. A nerdy guy, his weird roommate, and their friends interact with the hot new neighbor who's much more socially well-adjusted. It's a fairly interesting plot right off the bat. The problem being that it realizes fairly quickly that it doesn't have anywhere interesting to go. But hey, at least they realized it themselves. Though watching Leonard obsess over his neighbor is honestly kind of creepy. The will they, won't they kind of feels like an off-brand Ross and Rachel, except somehow done worse despite Big Bang Theory giving their leading couple a more definitive ending. In the same vein that the show doesn't make jokes for nerds but rather about nerds, the same could be said for smart people. I've heard more people than I probably should have say that The Big Bang Theory is an incredibly smart show. In fact, I had a teacher in high school try telling me that the show was basically made for her. Because while other people were laughing at the joke that Penny didn't understand something that Sheldon or someone said, she knew what he was saying, and it was absolutely hilarious. You just had to get the show. To be fair, you need a very high IQ to understand The Big Bang Theory. But also, Suzanne, I'm an adult now, so I'm going to use your first name, the jokes actually aren't that smart. The show isn't a show for smart people, it's a show about smart people.
I was making a joke.
I'm the boss. I make the jokes.
I saw this Venn diagram a while back that I think did a pretty good job placing this and a bunch of other shows into which is about smart people, for smart people, about dumb people, and for dumb people, and all combinations. And while I typically don't really like most things like this because I think media can be a bit more complex than boiling it down like that, I think it's a fairly alright example. It's a show lampooning smart people. A ton of the jokes are either Penny or some other non-scientist cast member looking confused at everyone else, or just everyone else pointing a finger at Sheldon and being confused. But the most important part is that, thankfully, they do have a laugh track so I know when the jokes are. Which sounds like I'm doing that Always Sunny bit until you realize that if you watch the show without a laugh track, it actually becomes hard to tell where the jokes are sometimes.
Penny dear, why don't you shoot another silver bullet my way?
Get one yourself.
Ooh, somebody's been taking bitchy pills.
Not to mention the catchphrases. Remember when that was a thing? Bajangles.
Bazinga!
Let's talk about the characters themselves. We've touched on Penny and Leonard, the main couple early in the show. The dumb hot girl and a smart nerdy awkward guy. Will they, won't they? You get the gist. But beyond these two, there's Sheldon Cooper, the breakout character from the show. We'll get a good bit more into him here in a hot minute. Raj, an astrophysicist and their friend, and Howard, an engineer and also their friend. Raj spends a good bit of the series with crippling social anxiety, but only really around women. He can't even talk to women for a solid portion of the show. He eventually kind of gets over this, but I guess it's better when he's drunk, which could be something of a funny bit. In fact, the social ineptitude of the whole cast could be and can be at times funny, but all of the characters do find a smidge of growth throughout the series run, but ultimately almost all of their individual growth comes from their interactions with women. Obviously, Leonard and Penny are the main will they won't they for a good bit of the series, even if they only break up once, I think, in the main series proper. While you can watch these two come together, marry, and prepare to start a family, throughout the series run, Penny is still kind of relegated to that hot girl. In fact, Penny's character throughout the show doesn't really feel like she has much agency or development. In fact, and I guess this is a spoiler, but come on, it's the Big Bang Theory, Penny is revealed to be pregnant, despite Penny being pretty vocal about not wanting children. And they kind of gloss over this and act like it's a great thing, despite it going directly against what she'd wanted.
Was Amy suspicious when they had to let your dress out?
No, she was so happy she didn't even question it.
This is something that even the actress who played Penny had commented on. So now it's time to dive a little deeper into Sheldon Cooper, who again quickly became the standout for the show. His eccentricity, social awkwardness, and adherence to routine provided a wealth of comedic material. However, as the show went on for far too long, some viewers found his behavior to be increasingly one-dimensional and repetitive, but they also helped perpetuate harmful stereotypes about people on the autism spectrum or those with similar behavioral traits. It had such an inherently negative impact that it almost made people believe that all people on the autism spectrum should act in a similar way to Sheldon Cooper, be exceptionally smart, incredibly awkward, and generally terrible to your friends.
Because when he wasn't happy, we wanted to kill him. There was even a plan.
It's okay, you're so great that they'll just have to deal with you. While it succeeded in making its audience and fellow characters of the show develop empathy and be more aware of people on the autism spectrum, the mainstream virality of the show propped up Sheldon as the standard for people with autism and not the massive exception to the role. Not to mention, the show had a nasty habit of occasionally undermining his personal growth in moments of empathy. It would constantly fall into the trap of using his unique characteristics solely for comedic effect, rather than exploring the complexity of his personality. Only 1 or 2 episodes a season would focus on Sheldon's difficulties of being a normal member of society in the trauma he had growing up, while the rest would only treat it as a joke with ill-timed laugh tracks. Plus, they gave his supposedly traumatic childhood a whole comedy prequel spin-off, so really, what message are they even trying to send here? Again, holy hell, Young Sheldon's been on for 6 seasons. Moving on to Howard Wolowitz, known for his sleazy pickup lines, inappropriate behavior, and general objectification of women. His interactions with anything that even remotely resembled a woman often bordered on harassment, and his growth throughout the series was questionable at best. While he did eventually settle down and start a family, his earlier actions remained a contentious aspect of the show for many. And there isn't even enough time to get into the dynamic he has with Stewart, the comic book owner, but we're definitely giving him a bombastic side eye. The show's treatment of women in general has been a topic of hot debate. As mentioned earlier, Penny's character arc often revolved around her relationship with the male characters rather than her individual growth and aspirations. The lack of diverse, well-developed, or even engaging female characters was particularly evident in the early seasons. So the show decided to slap a band-aid on the problem by bringing in smart female characters that represented many of the awful traits that the male cast were already exhibiting. Which, I don't know how screwing up that bad is even possible. Bernadette and Amy, basically Sheldon and Leonard with a hefty side of Howard, were brought in to add more depth to the female cast, but some viewers still found aspects of their character development to be problematic. Amy, an uber-smart neurobiologist almost equal in genius to Sheldon, was a socially awkward woman who just desperately wanted friends and was doomed to end up as Sheldon's love interest. And she was apparently desperate enough to wholeheartedly take him with open arms. Then there's Bernadette, the ultra-intelligent microbiologist who is a girl boss TM, takes no crap from no man, is her own woman, and ends up as Howard's wife, who stays at home for a good portion of the show because she quickly became pregnant. All of the women in the show mirror a similar pattern of just ending up with male counterparts that the show has to bend over backwards to explain. And don't even get me started on Alex, a physics doctoral student who's Sheldon's assistant, but has the hots for Leonard and makes Penny worried and threatened, and Leonard is just oblivious to the whole thing. The show spent several seasons beating us over the head with the fact that Penny is way out of Leonard's league, but now he's this hot catch and Penny is just jealous, and Leonard now likes the attention and is able to show Penny how he felt all this time before. It sort of felt like the show's writers had a grudge they wanted to iron out on screen and take revenge on all the female cast for daring to be beautiful and smart. But enough beating this dead horse, let's wrap things up. In terms of comedic style, The Big Bang Theory relied heavily on traditional sitcom tropes, including slapstick humor, innuendos, and catchphrases. While this formula tended to appeal to a wide audience and contributed to the show's popularity, it also made the humor feel predictable and formulaic at times, especially as the show went on. As the show continued to air, its popularity waned among certain fans and demographics who were more critical of its portrayal of various themes. The humor, character dynamics, and reliance on stereotypes became more glaring as social awareness and expectations evolved. The people who loved it eventually grew to see the flaws of the shows and moved on from watching it as it continued to drag on. The Big Bang Theory, while undeniably popular and successful, raises valid points about its portrayal of character, its reliance on dated and problematic comedic tropes, and its missed opportunities for having meaningful conversations about the growth and representation it shallowly tried to discuss. The show's humor, while promising at first, often seemed to capitalize on outdated stereotypes, particularly in the early seasons, and it never really shook those habits off, even by the end. Their portrayal of socially awkward characters like Sheldon, Amy, and Stuart sometimes teetered on making light of genuine behavioral or neurological challenges. While the characters' quirks, for lack of a better term, undoubtedly provided comedic fodder, they could inadvertently perpetuate harmful misconceptions about individuals with similar behavioral traits. So, compounding all the factors we presented, it's really a no-brainer why the show became the bane of everyone's existence, especially the people who desperately tried to get away from the show but couldn't due to its massive popularity. The Big Bang Theory's immense popularity and incredible commercial success should not for a second overshadow the critical examination of its flaws. While it undoubtedly resonated with a wide, and I mean massively wide audience, it also served as a reflection of the television landscape at the time, one that was still grappling with how to navigate evolving social norms and expectations. As with any cultural phenomenon with a massive effect on pop culture, The Big Bang Theory's legacy is a complex tapestry of both its achievements and its shortcomings. But anyways, thanks for watching. If you like this video, comment down below what you'd like to see me talk about in the future. Follow me on X or Twitter. I'm going to still call it Twitter at 10kbill to stay up to date on everything I'm working on. Support us on our Patreon if you like this content and want to see more like it. And of course, make sure you subscribe for all your entertainment related content.